Let's take a look at people's reactions to. We got some new Diddy stuff, and then we'll take a look at Brett Cooper's reaction to some of the Diddy stuff. And then we got Good Logic, who's been able to watch the trials because he lives in New York. So he's been reporting on the trials. If you want to get more information on the trials.
10 at the Diddy trial, and this morning we saw testimony from Capricorn Clark, longtime assistant to Diddy on and off between 2004 and 2018. She documented a whole new series of crimes that we had not yet heard about while corroborating testimony from Kid Cudi and Cassie Ventura. I am Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic. I'm an attorney in downtown New York, covering this trial and dropping 2 videos a day, letting you know what's happening inside the courtroom and giving you a legal perspective on matters that you're not going to get from legacy media. If you like that type of coverage, I urge you to please like, share, and subscribe as I bring you details and perspectives you're not finding elsewhere. Now, when Capricorn Clark took the stand today, we had already heard her name several times. During testimony from Cassie Ventura and Kid Cudi, they both identified her as someone they recognize as an ally in the Diddy world, someone who could be a liaison at times to work between them and Diddy when Diddy was particularly outraged with them individually. Now, Capricorn worked for Diddy and was first started a relationship with him as a friend of his going back to 2002, and started working for him in 2004, taking various roles. And she told over one of the new crimes she talked about, potential crimes at least, is that in 2004 there was a theft of some jewelry. Some jewelry went missing, and that it had been in her possession, and that Diddy had her take a lie detector test for 5 days.
Wait, what? Diddy made her take a lie detector test?
5, 6 o'clock at night, that she was locked in a building on the 6th floor with a guy who was 5 times as wide as she is, and forced to go through grueling lie detector examination from this individual day after day after day. And that she was threatened that if in fact she failed this lie detector test, that he was going to kill her. Now, she was fired sometime there afterwards and brought back on when they were trying to make arrangements for Kid Cudi, for Diddy's 35th birthday. And she had shown a knack for being able to deal with celebrities. She'd been working with him on various campaigns and shown a knack for assembling different celebrities.
Oh, so she's a well-known, basically, agent or
and her relationship goes on
planner
and off. She'll work for a couple of
people?
years, and then some incident will happen, and she'll leave. She ends up at a later period of time where she works as the PR manager for Cassie Ventura near the end of her tenure. And she basically, throughout her time there, has a very close interpersonal relationship with Diddy, where she's working with him on a day-by-day basis. Now, some of the stuff that she ended up corroborating and the really intriguing testimony that came from Capricorn related to the incident with Kid Cudi that happened at the end of 2011. This is right before Christmas, at which time we've now had 3 witnesses who have testified between Cassie, Kid Cudi, and Capricorn Clark to the outrage that Diddy displayed when he first learned of an ongoing relationship between Cassie Ventura and Kid Cudi. Now, Capricorn had known about this relationship for a while. She testified that she went with Cassie to get her burner phone because she was concerned that if Diddy would find out about this relationship, that all hell would break loose, and she figured that Diddy controlled her phone, and that the best thing for her to do would be to get a burner phone. When Diddy found out about this, she said it was on December 22nd, 2011, that he came to her and took her at gunpoint in a car, saying, "We're going to get Cassie," and that they had gone to Cassie's house. They had gone to Kid Cudi's house, and they were driving around, and they were they stopped off at a hotel for a while, and were hanging out a couple of miles away from Kid Cudi's house, and the different interactions that she had with Cassie and Kid Cudi by phone at the express direction of Diddy. Now, Diddy saw that there was a personal relationship between Capricorn Clark and Cassie, And at one point during that day, before the police had arrived, when they saw that the police were going to be coming, and he said that Diddy seemed to calm a little bit when he saw the police involvement was coming down. That he had Cassie collect, he had Capricorn collect Cassie to bring her back to his house, and that was what she did. She, at Diddy's direction, according to Capricorn, called up Cassie and told Cassie that Diddy refuses to let her go, meaning he's going to hold on to Capricorn until Cassie would come, and was essentially using her as a bargaining chip, that she was being held hostage by Diddy until Cassie would come and meet with Diddy. Now, this is what, and in fact, the testimony opened, very near the opening statement. One of the first questions she got was, "Were you kidnapped by Diddy?" And she said yes. And that's the incident she's referring to, not the incident so much with the lie detector test, which some would qualify as a kidnapping in 2004. But the 2011 incident is what they're referring to as a kidnapping. After she ends up collecting Cassie, she also was directed to go to Kid Cudi and contact him and tell him that with the police coming to his house, that he should not identify Diddy as the person who came to his house or having any relationship to it. Otherwise, quote unquote, he said he will kill us all. Meaning, presumably Capricorn, Cassie, and Kid Cudi, that he was threatening that if the police were notified of his involvement in approaching Kid Cudi's house, when Kid Cudi called the police and ended up reporting a break-in, that if he would identify Diddy, that he would kill them all. So this is all very consistent with the testimony that we heard from both Cassie and from Kid Cudi as to the events that went down near the end of 2011. He said after he got Cassie, that Capricorn brought Cassie back to Diddy's house. And that Diddy, this is the hours after Diddy had learned of the relationship between Cassie and Kid Cudi, that he kept kicking her and kicking her, never using his hands, kicking her in the legs, kicking her in the back, and that she would go back a couple of steps and go back a couple of steps until she ended up going back like into the street. Like he literally kicking her out of her house, not in the way of saying get out, and she's steadily curling more and more into the fetal position. She's crying as she's giving this testimony as to how pitiful Cassie looked and how she didn't intervene, because Diddy warned her that if he tries intervening, that he was going to beat her as well, and eventually directing her to leave. And that as she's walking away, she could still hear him kicking her and kicking her
bodily
as
harm.
she's just laying on the ground crying and in a fetal position. What part of her body is he kicking? Whatever part he could access. The parts that he was kicking.
I mean, we already saw that
throughout
with the
this
fucking
entire
video.
time. Well, he had a bodyguard with him by the name of Ruben, one of the bodyguards who he had, whose names we have heard throughout the course of testimony from other witnesses, including Cassie and Kid Cudi, and that he did nothing to intervene. Capricorn said that she said to Ruben, "You have to do something," when he was, as she says, kicking the snot out of Cassie, not using that word, but that. And that
Kicking
Ruben refused to intervene.
Shiz
she
out of
called
her.
up
Yeah.
another bodyguard who was identified as an ally, so to speak, of Cassie by the name of D-Rock, and he said that he'll take care of it, but nothing was happening. She said she refused. She didn't call the police and she was asked, "Why didn't you call the police?" And she said because the whole incident with Kid Cudi made it very clear that Diddy was not going to tolerate her contacting the police. But what she did do was that she called Regina Ventura, Cassie's mother, and told her the same thing she told D-Rock, that Diddy is kicking the snot out of your daughter, and she said that she'll take care of it. And that she was fired shortly thereafter, but that she had further exchanges with Diddy at other times where he seemed outraged about the fact and asking how long you knew about this and why didn't you tell me about this. And then a few weeks later, she ends up getting fired, which she claims were under false pretenses, and the lawsuits that she filed as a result of her wrongful employment. And she ends up coming back to work, and she ends up working back in 2018. Like I said, this is a very on and off relationship that they have here. But what's significant about this testimony, and she's currently in the middle of going through cross, and the defense is certainly going down this particular direction, that you keep coming back. You keep describing these conditions that are absolutely horrific. No one should be working in this type of situation, watching Diddy engage in abuse, commit crimes, and trying to cover up those crimes, telling people, if you talk to the police, I'm going to kill you.
Basically.
Trying to obstruct those crimes. All of these different things that you've seen, and the defense is setting up, but you keep coming back. You keep coming back, implying to the jury, from the defense's perspective, hopefully, that they shouldn't trust her testimony that was nearly as horrific as she was describing. This has been thematic throughout the defense cross-examinations we've seen so far, where Agnifilo would continually ask every witness we've seen who have spent extended times with Diddy and complained of various abuses, or that they saw or witnessed or were victims of themselves, that you had fun, that were good times. This has been the theme, to try and isolate the particular incidents of abuse and brutality and potentially criminal conduct into being in a box and separate and apart from the overall atmosphere of being in Diddy world. We're still in the middle of cross-examination. I will let you know how that unfolds as this continues. I'm Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic, an attorney in downtown New York, covering this every day. I urge you, if you like this type of conduct, please make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell. Till next time, Godspeed.
There you have it. He also has a afternoon follow-up, and we can watch that one as well right here.
We spent this entire afternoon listening to the cross-examination redirect of Capricorn Clark, and defense counsel Mark Agnifilo had Capricorn Clark bawling her eyes out for several segments of her testimony, and at times seeming to be a little bit confused and not sure of her recollection as to the series of calls she made while she was sitting in Diddy's car outside of Kid Cudi's house. But the legal impact of the cross-examination, which seemed to be making some hay. The question as far as the legal impact is something that can be up for debate. I'm Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic. I'm down at the Diddy trial every day, dropping a couple of videos a day, letting you know what's going on, and I try to cover it at night and give you much greater detail. Now, this morning, Capricorn Clark came out and testified that she had been a personal assistant to Diddy on and off between the period of 2004 and 2018, taking an extended break in 2012 until 2017, when she was fired in that summer of 2012. She had testified about how she spent 5 grueling days in 2004 when she was taking a lie
held hostage
day after day for 6-8 hours a day, when Diddy suspected that she was involved in the theft of some missing jewelry, and had purportedly threatened that if she fails the lie detector test, that he was going to kill her, and that she was fired shortly thereafter and brought back on. And then she ended up working with Cassie. Some of the testimony she came out seemed somewhat abrasive in her assessment of Cassie's talents. She referred to Cassie as having talent, but not being talented. And when questioned further on that, she said, well, I consider people like Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston talented. That they are stage singers, they can get up there and belt out a song, as opposed to Cassie, who's more of a studio talent, that she needs some equalization, she needs some boosting from the mic and from behind the scenes, and that she's not quite the same level of talent.
Basically, she needs more help.
As those other famous
and more,
musicians.
I guess, practice.
That certainly is something that could play into Diddy's defense to a degree, I guess, in the sense that his refusal to release some of her albums perhaps could be that he will claim, or his defense wants the jury to think, that perhaps she just couldn't hack it at the same level, or at the level that they were hoping
That
that
they
they can
want,
get
yeah,
out of
that
her.
they
She also
basically
stated that
want.
when she was on stage, she seemed nervous and would struggle with some of her performances. So that was the abrasive assessment of her talent from Capricorn Clark, who has been a music industry insider for most of her career, jumping from one company to another in the early part of her career before being brought on by Diddy to work with Bad Boy Entertainment. Now, there was a lot of damning evidence that was presented this morning when she told over the entire story, what it was like sitting in the car with Diddy the morning that he had found out that Cassie Ventura was having a relationship with Kid Cudi, and the rage that he was displaying, that he allegedly kidnapped Capricorn Clark at gunpoint, and she was questioned on cross-examination about this. And Mark Agnifilo made some great points, some great strides when he started questioning how did Diddy get into her apartment, which had a security guard there. Capricorn Clark claims, that the guy who was on duty when Diddy showed up, that he had been fired, and that supposedly he showed up in a rage with a gun, and that somehow had gained admission. And she said that an older woman who was the more usual security guard told Capricorn that guard had been fired. Then she was questioned about the trip to Kid Cudi's house and the phone call she made, which she said that she was trying to call someone for help, and also to notify and give a heads up to Kid Cudi that Diddy was coming after them, saying that the first person she called was Laura London, which she describes as a close friend, like her sister at the time. And she said that the reason she called Lauren was because she had fears as to that she was just going to disappear. And in fact, she testified on direct that when she was told to call
the
Cassie
fear of death,
in order to
I would
convince
assume.
Cassie to come visit Diddy at Diddy's direction, that Diddy told Cassie through Capricorn. So this is Capricorn now talking to Cassie, saying, Diddy said he's not going to let me go until you come here, until you agree to come to his house and meet with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that Cassie accordingly agreed to come. But when questioned about her phone calls that she made to Cassie while Diddy was inside the house with his security guard, Ruben, and she said that Diddy was going in and coming out and he would see her on the phone, and she was trying to sneak in phone calls, she seemed confused as to who was on the phone, whether it was a conference call that she made with Lauren when she called up Cassie, or whether Lauren was not on the phone. And Agnifilo made some great strides as far as showing that perhaps her memory may not be so perfect. But the bawling part that I referenced earlier in this video, that came when she was being questioned about her repeated attempts to come back to Diddy. She got fired. Now, this incident with Kid Cudi happens in late 2011, right around Christmas time. And she
So
ends
this is
up
where
being
he kind of
fired that
just
summer, in the summer of
re-references what he
2012, and
said
she thought it was
during
because
the
it was punishment that
morning
came
stuff.
from Diddy, because she had helped Cassie in getting Cassie a burner phone and failing to tell Diddy about this burgeoning relationship. And she said that her perspective was, what people do is their business. I'm here to be professional. That's all I care about. I just care about the music industry here. And she certainly expressed some frustration with the levels of influence that Cassie had over Diddy. It was an interesting moment when she was talking about how she ultimately was brought back in 2017, and Mark Agnifilo said to her that, hey, obviously he heard your message. He came back to you, because she sent several emails to him apologizing, begging him to accept her apology for what we would presume is Diddy's perception of there being a betrayal. And she's bawling, saying that she was trying to get her life back. She just wants her life back. And on redirect, she clarified what that meant, which is that she felt that Diddy had blacklisted her from the industry. Now, a lot of that testimony, they would say move to strike, and the judge would strike it. So what we have as far as admissible testimony is her telling the jury that when she went for interviews, that she went to different agencies which would place people in with different music giants, that Diddy would show up there and
basically
basically
strong
be
arm
following
himself
her
into the
around. That one
situation
person
and fuck her
who had
over.
hired, who signed she signed a contract with, died the day after he signed the contract, which they didn't go any further into speculating about his cause of death, but that she found it impossible to work in what she called her core comprehension, her core competence area. That this is what she knew. This is what she was good at. She was good at working with celebrities. She was good at helping people in the music industry develop and further their careers. And that's all she wanted to do. And she felt as if this side distraction of the relationship between Cassie and Diddy ended up derailing her entire career, and that she felt, and she was bawling, that she just wanted to get her life back, saying, I have a son, he has autism, and she's crying, saying I can't, that she couldn't get any work, and that she ended up begging Diddy to take her back. Now, the couple of folks that I spoke to, journalists here, thought that Mark Agnifilo did a phenomenal job of discrediting her by getting her to bawl and to admit that she came running back to Diddy. That's one way of looking at it. Alternatively, the jury can look at it as Diddy was trying
seems
to
to have a
punish her and control
stranglehold on her
life
career,
so much
right?
so that she had no choice but to go back to Diddy. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to try and determine how the jury will read that. Those are the two completely opposing ways of looking at this cross-examination today, and time will tell once we get to an outcome here as to how the jury is viewing this testimony. At the very least, her statements and her story, as told on direct this morning, certainly seem to corroborate and were very largely consistent with the stories of the stories, and specifically the incident that happened between Cassie and Kid Cudi. That's what I got. I'm going to try to break this down in greater detail for you tonight. I urge you, please like, share, subscribe. If this
All right,
is
there
your
you
sort
have
of
it.
thing, I'm an attorney breaking this down.
Thank you,
There's no other
Joe, for
attorneys
the
that are trying to break
coverage
it down the way that I am.
of
And
good logic.
if you like that kind of coverage, please make
Well,
sure
this is
that
channel.
you not just like and subscribe, but hit that bell. Till next time, and I guess tonight, Godspeed.
Using Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey as the standard for talent isn't a fair comparison for most female singers now. Mariah has a 5-octave vocal range. Besides, one doesn't have to be strongest vocalist to sell records. For example, Britney Spears, J-Lo, or even Taylor Swift. Well, anyways, there you have it.